Okay, thank you very much. Up next, we have Kauai Council Chair Mel Rapozo, followed by Natalie Oakson of Focused.
Thank you. And I want to try to get this all done in 2 minutes. It's not a lot of time. But let me just say that, let me start by saying that, our constituents, and I'm here on behalf of our constituents on Kauai, and I'll echo what Mayor Cavalio's testimony was. And I will say that I just texted him to make sure that HCOM's position has not changed. HCOM and HSAC stands united against this bill as it relates to the TAT on the Outer Islands. So that has not changed. But our constituents are your constituents. My constituents on the County of Kauai are your constituents for our Kauai reps. They're no different. And they are very upset. And and if you don't know this, check Facebook. Because they are a lot of, and people laugh, but you know what? That's the truth. That's the truth. I want to take you back a few years when the legislature raised the TAT. Some of you were here, some of you weren't, but back in 2008, they raised the TAT from 7.25 to 8.25. And then the following year from 8.25 to 9.25. And that came with a commitment that once the economy got better, they were going to reduce it back to 7.25. It also came with a commitment that the cap on the county share of the TAT would be removed. And here we sit, 2017, and you guys want to raise the TAT 1%, and you want to keep the cap on. That's frustrating. And not only that, you're going to raise the TAT on my island and the other islands, and that's going to come to Honolulu. How do you figure that? Tourism numbers continue to climb. We're capped. And I heard someone say at one of the prior meetings, yeah, but we're making your 103 permanent. Nothing's permanent. You know that. But a stroke of a pen, but a special session, everything can be changed. I would ask for a little bit more time if you don't mind.
Thank you, Chair. If you could please wrap it up.
I will wrap it up.
Thank you.
And, I just got to say, $2.4 billion deal that's going to affect the Outer Islands. And 2 minutes, really, to be able to come up here and share your constituents' concerns really is not sufficient. But just give me 30 seconds. I just want to cover a couple of things. Tourism continues to rise. The numbers continue to rise. And that the counties will see no benefit. If we're going to do a special session to bail out rail, why are we not doing a special session to help out the homelessness on Kauai and the Outer Islands? Or the drug addiction problem, or the traffic problems, the school problems. I mean, why all this extra effort for an issue that affects a small percentage of people when you guys represent the entire state? And you're going to take the county's share, the generated monies from the counties to fund that. That's a frustrating. I want to close with this. There was a comment made earlier that, when Hurricane Iniki hit, everybody helped out. Well, you know what? Rail is not a natural disaster. Rail is not a natural disaster. It's a man-made one. Thank you.
Natalie Oakson of Focus, followed by Kim Lindvald.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, member of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify today.
From Kauai should just stay there, and the money here should stay here. Because that seemed to be part of the narrative of what you were suggesting, and you were so upset, it seemed, that people on Kauai, tourists on Kauai, might actually have to contribute something to Oahu, and yet you guys have, 70,000, 80,000 people, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's not what I said. I never said anything about what we raise we should keep. I never said that. And again, in 2 minutes, it's very difficult to get your point across, and I had a lot more to say. But I guess for me, it's a fairness issue involving a TAT in general. And the counties feel like it's not fair. That's all I was trying to say. And if the legislature is going to take this bold measure to raise the TAT on the Outer Islands, and all of it comes to Oahu for rail, it's very hard to sell that to our constituents when we have some pressing issues on Kauai caused by the increased numbers of tourists.
Well, that would be difficult because it's taken out of context. The context for example, that 70% of TAT is raised by Oahu, and we get less than 50%. So maybe
Well,
if you use those
well,
real
Representative,
numbers.
looking at the task force report from a couple of years ago, what I read, and I don't have it with me, but what I read was collectively the outer islands or the neighbor islands received about 51%, and Oahu had 49%. That's what I read in a task force report.
That sounds familiar. Yeah. But that's all. That's
I didn't make
enough.
that up.
what I
That's
wanted
what's
to hear.
written. That's
Yeah.
and that's the data I have, and
Thank
it's
you.
not 70%.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Ampao. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Rep. Kachola, followed by Rep. Kyo Kalole.
The Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
If he's okay with that. And Mr. White too, I guess, because he answered the question. Mr. Rapozo, do you want to retract your previous statement that you never said that this TAT proposal was a tax on neighbor island residents?
Was a tax on the local residents?
Yeah. Representative Lopresti just asked this question where I think all of the council members who were up here said they never said that this proposal was a tax on neighbor island residents. We all recognize it's just, an increase on the TAT.
Correct.
Do you want to retract that statement?
Retract which statement?
You want to take that back? Because on August 28th, on your Facebook, that's 2 days ago, you stated on your Facebook page, the neighbor islands should not be paying for Oahu's rail project when you're commenting about this proposal.
That's a true statement. I did say that. So I'm not going
but
to
you
retract
guys
that.
just said, like 3 minutes ago, that you acknowledge that neighbor island residents are not paying for this outside of the ancillary costs to, the neighbor island economy, which I'm going to ask Chairman White about, or for those neighbor island residents who are actually staying in hotels. So I'm confused.
Well, should I read the statement again on Facebook?
The neighbor islands should not, should not is in capital
Neighbor
letters,
islands.
be paying for Oahu's rail project.
Correct. It doesn't say the neighbor island residents. The TAT generated funds. The money's generated.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I never said the residents. Residents will pay TAT when they travel. I never said residents are going to pay the TAT on Kauai.
So when you said neighbor islands, you meant hotel operators who provide services to people who pay the TAT.
Again, like I said in my opening comments to his question, it's a fairness issue. The TAT revenues are capped. We don't get our fair share. That's the neighbor islands.
I don't think Campbell High School gets its fair share of dollars to go toward their infrastructure. I mean, that gets paid out of the GET, though.
No,
right?
you folks have capped our TAT revenues. You capped it.
What I'm asking you is, if you're saying it's an issue of fairness, then maybe what we should be talking about is per capita distribution of the GET. That's a fairness issue for the people in Kaneohe.
Well, that's not on the table today. I guess
it is. Well, I mean, I don't understand why not.
it's obvious that you folks have, or many of you have made up your
Next
decision.
year. Yeah.
And laugh all you want. I guess my point is this. And all the constituents, there's not one person that I know of on Kauai, and I'm here for Kauai. I'm not here for anyone else. Supports this.
Yeah, that's because you're on Facebook saying that we're going to tax the neighbor islanders.
I never said that on text.
I mean, that's the way I read it.
Yeah, well, obviously, because you have an opinion. But the bottom line is the TAT revenues that we should be getting, we're not.
Are you entitled? Are the county governments entitled to TAT revenues?
Are we entitled?
Are you entitled to TAT revenues?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, where does it say that?
Well, where does it say that we're not?
The state constitution, I believe.
Then why do we get it?
Because the legislature provides a grant to the neighbor islands. The TAT authority falls under which government's jurisdiction?
The state.
The county or the state. Yeah, and it's authorized through what mechanism? Isn't it the state constitution?
Correct.
Okay, so where in the state constitution does it say that the counties are entitled to TAT?
I don't know where you're trying to head with this. It's obvious that we don't agree on the cost sharing or the sharing of the TAT.
What I'm trying to say is that the discussion right now is misleading. And when you go to the neighbor islands and you say there's this issue of fairness, yeah, there's an issue of fairness that at the legislative level we need to recognize and account for when we distribute GET and TET monies to the counties, but also when we distribute it to the Department of Education for schools, harbors, highways, all these sorts of things. So you're opening a can of worms, to quote my colleague earlier, when you bring up these issues of fairness and you don't properly clarify exactly what you're talking about. When you say the neighbor islands shouldn't be paying taxes for Oahu projects, what you're saying is that hotels on the neighbor islands shouldn't be devoting their tax revenue that the legislature is using its constitutional prerogative to increase to go towards infrastructure projects on Oahu that will ultimately benefit the economy of the state of Hawaii, so that we have GET revenues to distribute back to the neighbor islands and everybody else on Oahu for things like schools, for things like drug programs that you mentioned earlier. And so I just think that the discussion here is a mischaracterization of the issue. If the counties are entitled to TAT revenues, then maybe we should do a constitutional amendment or a constitutional convention and hash these discussions out in a open and transparent way, yeah? And then maybe we can talk about the counties taking back the public schools like every other state in the country does, yeah? And then we'll be discussing these issues on an apples-to-apples basis in a fair and transparent way. Otherwise, I think that this is like my previous colleague mentioned, this is a bit of a mischaracterization of the issue. And a little bit of wordsmithing going on when you say neighbor islands, but you really only mean neighbor island hotels. You don't really mean neighbor island people, because that's not how my cousins on Kauai are interpreting this thing.
Well, I would ask that you contact your cousins on Kauai and see how they feel. Like I said, I don't know.
Well, they're looking at your Facebook page.
And I think it's an accurate depiction, and that's my opinion, and you have yours. You know, what I'm hearing, and I've heard this at the House today, is how the state comes and says, hey, you guys should be thankful, and you know.
That's not what I said.
No, I didn't say you said it. I said I've heard this.
Oh, here we go again.
Theme. And the reality is, you know, the counties pick up a lot of the slack that the funding have been cut.
You mean the residents of your island of Kauai through their property taxes?
Correct.
They pick up a lot of the costs.
Programs that have been cut by the state for funding, we pick up. And, you know, I'm not keeping score, but that's what I'm hearing. This morning and now, I'm hearing that.
But you are keeping score.
I'm not. You brought it up, and I'm just saying
that's what your Facebook page says.
Oh, watch my Facebook after this.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
I'm just being real. I'm
So
being
am I.
real. And you know what? I'm here on behalf of my constituents.
And so am I.
Absolutely. And I respect that, and I accept that. And at the end of the day, you all will vote, and your constituents will see how you vote, and they will take appropriate action. That's all I'm saying. I'm here on behalf of Kauai. And HSAC took a united stand on this bill. That's why I'm here. Not to debate
thank you.
your
I want to ask
district.
Chairman White a question about the TAT.
Sure.
Because I am curious about because you bring up a good point. You know, I mean, there is an ancillary impact to each community when you raise the hotel room. I mean, maybe Mr. Case or
What Rep. Keokalole was saying, that what you're saying.
I think I clarified everything.
No, to your constituents, because they're your constituents.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's part
you
of
know,
our jobs as elected officials to communicate and educate our constituents when there's misinformation. And a lot of my colleagues have been thrown under the bus from the neighbor islands by you guys who are lying to your constituents about what's really happening.
I'm going to be honest. I don't even know why I'm still here. I should have left a long time ago. But I will just say this. I am the chair. I run my meetings on Kauai. I would never think of doing what you do. Of how you treated us today. And let me just say this. You take this road show, bring it to the outer islands, and then you can deal with the constituents, and you can tell them the so-called truth. Do it. Don't come here and give us 2 minutes to come and explain our island's position in 2 minutes, and then bring us back up to chastise us and call us liars. That's totally inappropriate in my opinion. So I got to catch a flight as well. But you bring this road show to Kauai, and I'll be there, and I'll make sure the auditorium is full, that you can go let the people know what you guys are trying to do. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any other questions